guys, I just watched the first episode of Disney Plus's new Marvel series, Moon Knight. This will be a full spoiler review ahead, and maybe even some potential spoilers if you guys are reading the comics. So, you guys have been warned. So starting off, there's been a lot of chat on the internet around this series, if it's going to be good, or if it's going to be bad, or if it's not going to live up to the hype, and as a Moon Knight fan myself, this really worried me, but seeing the trailers and the awesome promotion Marvel are doing on their Instagram, I can tell Marvel are very confident with this series and that the fans will enjoy it. And personally for this first episode, I really did. Let's get into it. So the first director of this series is actually a man named Justin Benson. And it's also written by a man named Doug Perlin. And if you guys didn't know, Doug Perlin was the guy who actually wrote the Moon Knight comics. And he created the character. And I really like that Marvel let him do his thing with this, because Moon Knight isn't really a well-known character. He's very underrated in my opinion. And now that he's getting his own series on Disney Plus, hopefully he gets the love and attention he really does deserve. Speaking of Moon Knight, Oscar Isaac's performance as not only Stephen Grant, but also Mark Spector is stellar. He knocks it out of the park with this. And what I really liked about his character in this episode is that Marvel actually, they sort of focus on the mental health side of Moon Knight. And that was one of my main worries going into this show, that they wouldn't do that. But I thought it was crazy. And the way they sort of showed his alternate personalities with the mirrors and the glass and stuff, Justin Benson kicked it out of the park with the cinematography. As I mentioned, it was amazing. So at the other side of the table, we actually have Ethan Hawke's character, which is the antagonist of this season. And his name is Arthur Harrow, and that's a bit weird, but I'll tell you guys about that in a minute. There's a great scene where he's actually with this lady, and a bit of context for this scene. He worships this god, and it's the god of judgment, and the god name is Ahmet. And basically he's with this woman, and he's testing her to see if she has sin in her life and if she can pass to the afterlife. And if not, she'll die, because she, like, I don't know, she says that she hasn't sinned, but she has. And so she's lying, basically. And obviously lying is also a sin, so if you think about it, she would have died anyway. But that isn't the weirdest thing about this character, guys. As I mentioned, this will be a spoiler for the comics, by the way. Arthur Harrow only appears in one issue of the comics, and I thought that was really weird. So I did some research online, and a lot of fans are theorizing that this is actually a red herring, and Arthur Harrow is actually an alias for the very infamous Moon Knight villain, the Sun God, or even the Dracula, which actually could connect with Blade in the MCU. And obviously we've not seen much of Blade in the MCU, but Disney Plus event last year, they announced that Mahershala Ali will actually have the mantle of Blade in his film next year. So if he makes a cameo in this series, I think that would be awesome. And if Arthur Harrow actually does turn out to be Dracula, of course. But speaking of the MCU, guys, this show feels very disconnected from the MCU. And surprisingly, I loved it, because the TV rating for this is actually, I think, TV 14 or TV 15, and it's the equivalent of what the first Daredevil series was. And it uses that very well, to say the least, because it's not only violent, it's also very scary. Well, not very scary, but you know, it's very intense. The last 20 minutes of this episode, where he's suiting up and he defeats this jackal, is really intense. It scared me and my friend that were watching it. It was really, really good. It was very gripping. But basically, yeah, it really surprised me what they did with this, because it just didn't feel like it was in the MCU. But I loved it. And another thing also to mention, guys, is that they actually included some of Moon Knight's origin, but they didn't explain it, so I'll explain it for you guys now. So basically, Mark Spector is the alternate identity of Stephen Grant, but in the comics this is the other way around. So Mark Spector dies on a mission in Egypt, and he gets resurrected by this god called Khonshu, which is the god of the moon, and he makes an appearance in this episode very briefly, but he is scary. and his appearance is very comic accurate, to say the least. And he's voiced by a man, what was his name? F. Murray Abram, I think his name was. He had a very deep voice, and it reminded me of Eddie and Venom's relationship that they have in their films, and I thought that was brilliant. However, it's a lot more serious in this case, obviously. And he makes Mark take over Steven's personality and switch in times that where he's in danger, and they do this really cool thing where he blacks out and stuff. I thought that was amazing. Yeah, well, as you guys can tell, I love this episode. I thought it was a really good way to start the series and to let everyone know this amazing story that obviously some people don't really know, because as I said, it's a very underrated character. Not a lot of people know about Moon Knight. But any negatives? Wow. It's good when you're struggling to think of negatives, guys. I'd probably say there was a bit of a lack of action, but I actually kind of liked that, because what they did with this episode was they sorted out the two main sort of personalities first, and they sort of wrapped it all together at the end and showed Moon Knight. I thought that was great. Personally, I loved Moon Knight. There were positives and there were a few negatives. But overall, guys, I'd probably give this pilot episode a 9 out of 10. I loved it. But what did you guys think of the first episode of Marvel's Moon Knight? Let us know down below. And I'll see you guys later. Goodbye!